Welcome to the Scottish Rite Journal podcast, an audio presentation of the Scottish Rite Journal, brought to you by the Supreme Council of the Scottish Rite, Southern Jurisdiction, Mother Supreme Council of the World. This week's article is Two Titans of American Music, Brother Florenz Ziegfeld and his son, founder of the Ziegfeld Follies, by Mark Beechey, and comes from the May-June 2022 issue of the Scottish Rite Journal. In William R. Denslow's 1957 book, 10,000 Famous Freemasons, Florenz Flo Ziegfeld is listed as a Freemason. Research for this article has turned up no evidence that the founder of the famous Ziegfeld Follies was a Mason. Rather, his father, Dr. Florenz Ziegfeld Sr., bore the same name and was a Mason, hence the confusion. The senior Ziegfeld, however, is interesting in his own right, including setting the stage for his son's success in the field of entertainment. Like many German immigrants, Dr. Florenz Ziegfeld Sr. came to America with the dream of giving his family a better life, arriving in Chicago during the American Civil War. A graduate of the University of Leipzig, he initially supported himself by teaching piano. Yet he dreamed of bigger things. In 1867, he founded the Chicago Academy of Music, later renamed the Chicago Musical College. Dr. Ziegfeld embraced his new country and its diversity. Able to speak English, German, and French, he soon met and married Rosalie de Hez, a Roman Catholic born in Belgium and raised in a Francophone family. Brother Ziegfeld himself was a Lutheran. His eldest son, Florenz Jr., was baptized as a Roman Catholic. Two other sons were baptized as Lutherans, and a daughter was baptized as a Methodist. He also served as worshipful master of Chicago's Accordia Lodge No. 277. Many of his Blue Lodge activities have been lost due to the Great Chicago Fire. Grand Lodge of Illinois records after the fire list him already as a past master of his lodge. Possibly he joined the Scottish Rite in 1896, if the Denslow book's information attributed to the son refers to the father. Dr. Ziegfeld's school was successful, and he served as the school's first president for almost 50 years. There were also setbacks, though. In 1871, only a few weeks after the conservatory moved to a new building, the Great Chicago Fire destroyed its structure and instruments. His son, Florenz Ziegfeld Jr., was a witness not only to the Chicago Fire, but also to the grit, determination, and entrepreneurial spirit his father showed while rebuilding the college. The school was open again by the end of the year. As the elder Ziegfeld was president of the Chicago Musical College, it is no surprise that he was elected to the Board of Commissioners for the International Congress of Musicians, the group responsible for producing the musical portion of the 1893 Chicago World's Fair. Dr. Ziegfeld pressed fair organizers to make world music a focus of a centerpiece of the fair musical program, but his efforts were met with limited success. Perhaps of greater long-term importance, Dr. Ziegfeld also assigned his son, Florenz Ziegfeld Jr., the task of traveling to Europe to recruit performers for the event. Among those whom he brought back was Cyrene, a dancer from England, Ivanov's Russian singers and dancers, and the Hamburg Bülow Orchestra. Thus began Florenz Ziegfeld Jr.'s practical training for recognizing and recruiting talent from around the globe. Ziegfeld Sr. was not only an academic musician, he also opened a nightclub called the Trocadero, recalling the Paris neighborhood of that name. Again he called upon his son, this time entrusting him with management of the club and the task of boosting low attendance. Ziegfeld Jr. founded an act in New York at the Casino Theater called Adonis, which featured strongman Eugene Sandow, a Prussian immigrant. Offering 10% of the gross to play at the Trocadero, Sandow was hired, packing the houses with people wanting to see the Muscle Man. Later, Sandow signed a contract with Ziegfeld Jr. to appear in a cross-country road tour. Ziegfeld Sr. was not happy that his eldest son was going to leave to pursue his own interests rather than working in the family business. Nonetheless, with his father's blessing, Ziegfeld Jr. left home in 1894 to manage the tour of Sandow from New York to San Francisco. Searching for a female lead to star in his first Broadway production, A Parlor Match, Ziegfeld Jr. traveled to London, where he was captivated by a young Polish-French singer named Anna Held. Miss Held agreed to travel to New York, fulfilling Ziegfeld Jr.'s desire to introduce a new and exotic talent to American audiences who he felt personified music, dance, and beauty. They eventually had a common-law marriage, although they later divorced in 1913. Anna inspired Ziegfeld Jr. to build on producer George Lederer's format for revue shows, inserting aspects of broad comedy as well as show elements drawn from the famous French Follies, Bergère. Thus, in 1907, thanks to Anna Held's inspiration, the first variety revue show of what came to be known as the Ziegfeld Follies was produced on Broadway. This lavish extravaganza was filled with elaborate and colorful costumes, sets, and lights, vastly more elaborate than most revues of the time. The shows featured song, dance, comedy sketches, and attractive women who were all hand-picked by the younger Ziegfeld. Glorifying the American girl, Ziegfeld girls symbolized all American youth and beauty, and the diverse players of different colors and creeds proved that the American dream was attainable for anybody. In 1910, at a time when minstrels replaced men and women of true black heritage in popular entertainment, Ziegfeld hired Bert Williams, a popular black comedian and singer, to appear on stage. While we have uncovered no evidence that Ziegfeld Jr., the founder of the Ziegfeld Follies, was a Mason, notable Masons who appeared in the Follies included comedians Brother Eddie Cantor, Brother W.C. Fields, and Brother Will Rogers. Brother Irving Berlin wrote music for the Ziegfeld Follies. Indeed, his song, A Pretty Girl is Like a Melody, became the theme song of the Follies. What would it have been like to work with Florenz Ziegfeld Jr.? I interviewed for this article the person known as the ambassador of the Great American Songbook, Michael Feinstein, a Grammy and Emmy-nominated entertainer who was Ira Gershwin's personal assistant and his archivist. Mr. Feinstein tells us of Ziegfeld's demanding side and his businessman's temperament. Ira Gershwin said that Flo had no ear for music and wasn't capable of truly appreciating it past what it could help him accomplish for his larger theatrical goals. He demanded songs quickly and sometimes looked at music as an afterthought or something he would tend to after he had assembled the more important elements of a show. Ira said there was always a short deadline for songs, and Ziegfeld was arbitrary and would often cut or change something and demand new songs or material. For the show Rosalie, he put the Gershwins and Sigmund Romberg together. Very strange bedfellows, but he owed them both contractually and was fulfilling an obligation. Thus, they co-wrote the score but didn't write together. Ziegfeld also cut the song The Man I Love from the show, which later became one of the great Gershwin standards. The Ziegfeld Follies closed in 1931, and Florenz Ziegfeld Jr. passed away in Hollywood, California on July 22, 1932. After having been visited by his second wife, Billie Burke, later famous for her portrayal of the Good Witch Glinda in The Wizard of Oz. The younger Ziegfeld's utilitarian musical tastes and shows continue to influence American musical theater today. The famous Ziegfeld Follies would live on for generations of moviegoers in films such as The Great Ziegfeld, Academy Award for Best Picture of the Year 1936, Ziegfeld Girl, Ziegfeld Follies, and Funny Girl. Of even greater importance, however, was his impact on modern plot-driven musicals. These can trace their roots to the foundations laid by Ziegfeld Jr. with the groundbreaking production of Showboat in 1927. Yet this career would not have happened if it had not been for Florenz Ziegfeld Sr., who had passed away himself only 9 years before his son. Musician, college founder, and Freemason, the elder Ziegfeld laid the groundwork for his son's later New York success. Further, his impact on American music continues today. His Chicago Musical College survives today as part of the Chicago College of Performing Arts of Chicago's Roosevelt University. The college is regarded by many as being the fourth oldest conservatory established in the United States. In closing, let us note that while we have been unable to prove that Florenz Ziegfeld Jr., the founder of the Ziegfeld Follies, was a Mason, we see the importance of his father and the Freemason, Florenz Ziegfeld Sr., and how the two men influenced each other's lives. In performing Masonic research, the unexpected may always await around the next corner. Any accompanying photographs or citations for this article can be found in the corresponding print edition. The Scottish Rite Journal is published by the Supreme Council of the Scottish Rite, Southern Jurisdiction, Mother Supreme Council of the World. Mark Dreisenstock, 32nd degree KCCH, Managing Editor. I'm your host, Matt Bowers.